Janet Jackson and Wissam Al Mana's love story seemed like a fairy tale at first. The legendary pop icon and the super-rich Qatari businessman tied the knot in 2012, keeping their marriage mostly private. Fans were shocked when news broke that Janet had secretly married Wissam, and for years, the couple lived a quiet, low-key life away from the spotlight. Then, in 2017, after 5 years of marriage, Janet welcomed her first and only child, a baby boy named Eissa Al Mana. At the time, Janet was 50 years old, making headlines worldwide for having a child later in life. She took a break from her career to focus on being a mom, and fans were excited to see this new chapter in her life. But just months after Eissa was born, things took a shocking turn. Janet and Wissam split, and rumors started swirling that their relationship had been far from perfect. What really happened behind closed doors? Let's get into it. Now buckle up, because this is where things start getting real messy. Just a few months after Janet Jackson gave birth to her first child, little Eissa Al Mana, her entire world turned upside down. The fairy tale romance that once seemed like a dream had completely crumbled, and Janet was done. Like, officially, legally, no turning back, done. But this wasn't some quiet, low-key separation where both people walk away peacefully. Oh no, this was full-on courtroom drama. Fans started picking up on the fact that something was off when Janet suddenly changed her whole vibe. She was seen out and about, no longer dressing conservatively like she had while married to Wissam, and she even started making public appearances again. Then, the real bombshell dropped. Janet herself came forward and confirmed that not only was she separating from her billionaire husband, but they were already dealing with lawyers, legal filings, and court proceedings. And y'all, let's be clear. When a celebrity like Janet Jackson has to go to court over a breakup, you know it's serious. This wasn't just some we grew apart situation. No, no, no. Insiders were already whispering that Janet had been unhappy for a long time, but nobody really knew the extent of the problems until now. Reports started surfacing that her marriage had been controlling, restrictive, and straight up suffocating. And Janet was finally breaking free. People close to her said she had been living under a whole new set of rules during her marriage, forced to change her appearance, her lifestyle, and even her career choices to keep her husband happy. But now, she was done playing by anyone else's rules. She was ready to take back control of her life, and from the looks of it, she was gearing up for one of the biggest fights of her life. And trust me, when a Jackson enters the courtroom, they do not go down without a fight. So what exactly led to this explosive split? What happened behind closed doors that made Janet say, enough is enough? And what kind of legal battle was she up against?
Why did you not want people to know you were married?
We just kept it private.
Right.
It was just a very private thing. We never told anyone. And we I think one or two people in my family knew. We just ran off and kind of did it.
Oh, honey, the tea is hot, and we're about to spill every last drop. Now, y'all, if there's one thing we know about the Jackson family, it's that they're tight-knit. So when Janet secretly tied the knot with Wissam Al Mana, it sent shockwaves through her own family. And here's where things get really wild. Because not only did they disapprove of her relationship from the very beginning, but some of them didn't even know she was married until the media reported it. Yes, you heard that right. Let's break it down. Janet and Wissam had been together for a while before making things official, but according to inside sources, her family never truly trusted him. From the moment Wissam came into Janet's life, those closest to her felt like something was off. And honestly, they weren't wrong. Her older sister, LaToya Jackson, who has always been outspoken about protecting Janet, later revealed that she had no clue her baby sister was even married. Imagine that! One of the biggest stars in the world, a member of the legendary Jackson family, getting hitched in total secrecy, and even her own sister had to find out like the rest of us, through the media. That alone speaks volumes about how much Janet was keeping under wraps during her relationship. But here's the thing, why would someone as close to their family as Janet hide such a major life event? According to those in the know, Wissam was extremely private and wanted to keep their relationship as low-key as possible. But was it just about privacy? Or was he already trying to isolate Janet from the people who loved her most? Because let's be real, when someone starts cutting you off from your family, that's a huge red flag. And Janet's family saw those red flags from the start. It wasn't just LaToya. Multiple members of the Jackson clan were skeptical of Wissam's influence over Janet. They reportedly felt like she was slowly changing, becoming less independent, more reserved, and far less in touch with the fun-loving, free-spirited woman they all knew and loved. And when she suddenly married him in a super-secret ceremony and didn't even tell her own sister, that only confirmed their worst fears. This wasn't just about a wedding. This was about control. And as time went on, the Jackson family's concerns only grew stronger. So why did Janet keep Wissam hidden from her family? Did she feel trapped? Was she afraid of how they would react? Or was Wissam already pulling the strings, making sure Janet had only him to rely on? One thing's for sure, when a Jackson family member is cut off from their loved ones, you know something isn't right. And y'all, the truth behind this marriage only gets darker from here.
But I was not in a great space. I was 18. I'd gone through a lot in my life. I was in a relationship. No one knew that I was married.
So what exactly happened after the wedding? What made Janet's family finally say, "We told you so"? And how did Janet go from a secret bride to a woman fighting for her freedom? Oh, honey, grab your tea, because we're about to spill every last drop. All right, y'all, let's talk about how much Janet Jackson completely transformed herself during her marriage to Wissam Al Mana. And not because she wanted to, but because she had to. Now, we all know Janet is a global icon. She's been setting trends, breaking records, and serving looks for decades. But the moment she got with Wissam, things started to change. Fast. And not just in a small, subtle way. This was a complete lifestyle overhaul. So let's break it down. When Janet first got together with Wissam, people started noticing that she was dressing differently. And I don't mean just switching up her style for fun. I mean completely covering up in a way that was totally different from the Janet we all knew. Gone were the bold, sexy, statement-making outfits that had become part of her signature look. Instead, she started wearing loose, conservative clothing. We're talking long sleeves, high necklines, even full traditional garments when she was in the Middle East. And sure, people change their style all the time, but this was drastic, but it didn't stop there. Janet's music and performances, the very things that made her a legend, started changing too. Now, if you've been following Janet's career, you know she's known for her electrifying performances. She's the woman who gave us Rhythm Nation, Control, That's the Way Love Goes, All for You, hits that had the world dancing. But suddenly, Janet was toning everything down. No more bold dance moves, no more sultry, edgy performances. She was now performing in a way that was way more reserved. Huge shift for someone who built an empire off of being fearless on stage. And here's where it gets even wilder. She even altered her lyrics. Yes, you heard that right. Janet changed the words to some of her songs to be more in line with Wissam's strict cultural and religious beliefs. And this is Janet Jackson we're talking about. The same woman who gave us Anytime, Anyplace, one of the most sensual songs of all time. For her to rewrite her own lyrics just to fit into Wissam's world? That's huge. That tells you just how much she was compromising who she was. And let's be real, this wasn't just about respecting a different culture. Janet wasn't just adapting. She was changing her entire identity. She wasn't just choosing to dress differently or tone things down. She was being expected to. And the longer she stayed in the marriage, the more she seemed to be disappearing from the Janet we all knew and loved. Now here's the real question. Was this really Janet's choice? Did she truly want to step away from the fierce, independent performer she had always been? Or was she doing it just to keep the peace in a marriage where she was expected to shrink herself to fit into someone else's world? Because let's not forget, Janet is a Jackson. She was raised in a family of performers. She built her empire on being unapologetically herself. So for her to suddenly dim her own light for a man, that's not just a little adjustment. That's a major red flag. And y'all, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Because as time went on, Janet started losing more and more of herself until one day, she couldn't take it anymore. So what was the final straw? What made Janet finally wake up and say, enough is enough? And how did she go from trapped in a controlling marriage to finally breaking free? Oh, honey, trust me, the tea is boiling and we're about to spill every last drop. Y'all,
We definitely loved each other, but it was more of a saving. Thinking.
This is where things start getting real dark. Because according to multiple reports, Janet Jackson wasn't just unhappy in her marriage. She was allegedly trapped. And when I say trapped, I don't just mean she didn't feel like herself. I mean she was isolated, controlled, and completely cut off from the people who loved her the most. Now, let's be clear. Janet Jackson is a global superstar. She spent her entire life in the public eye. Adored by millions, always surrounded by friends, family, and fans. But the moment she married Wissam Al Mana, all of that started to disappear. Slowly but surely, her world started shrinking. And before she even realized it, she was living a life that was barely recognizable, even to herself. One of the first red flags, Wissam reportedly started controlling her public presence. And y'all, when I say controlling, I mean Janet basically vanished. The Janet Jackson who used to own the stage, attend star-studded events, and interact with fans, gone. Suddenly, she was living a very private, very restricted lifestyle, and it wasn't because she wanted to take a step back. It was because Wissam wanted her to. Sources close to Janet said that while she was married to Wissam, she was expected to behave a certain way in public. She wasn't supposed to be the bold, outspoken Janet we all knew. She had to be quiet, reserved, and almost invisible. Even in the rare moments when she did appear in public, people started noticing that she wasn't her usual self. She wasn't as talkative. She wasn't as expressive. It was like she was being monitored at all times. And let's be real, when a woman as confident and powerful as Janet suddenly seems like she's walking on eggshells, that's another major red flag. But here's where things get even worse, because not only was Wissam reportedly controlling how Janet was seen in public, but he was also cutting her off from the people who loved her the most. We know how close Janet is to her family. The Jacksons may have had their ups and downs over the years, but at the end of the day, they've always been ride or die for each other. So when Janet suddenly stopped spending time with her siblings, her closest friends, and the people she grew up with, that was a huge red flag. According to sources, Wissam was not a fan of Janet's inner circle, and he allegedly did everything he could to keep her away from them. It started small, maybe discouraging her from visiting family as often, or saying things like, "Why don't we just spend time alone together instead?" But over time, it became full-on isolation. People close to Janet said she wasn't allowed to have the same kind of freedom she once had. She couldn't just hop on a plane and visit her family whenever she wanted. She couldn't make public appearances without approval. And worst of all, some sources claim that she wasn't even allowed to speak to certain family members at all. Now let's be real. When someone is blocking you from talking to your own blood, that's not just privacy. That's control. For the people who's watching this video, this was Janet Jackson, one of the most successful independent women in the music industry. But somehow, she had ended up in a situation where she was completely cut off from the world she had spent decades building. So, now we have to ask, how did this happen? How did Janet go from being a global superstar with total control over her life to a woman who reportedly felt trapped and powerless in her own marriage? And more importantly, what finally made her say enough? Because let me tell you, when Janet finally broke free, the truth about what she went through started spilling out. And let's just say what we know now, it's worse than anyone ever imagined. Stay tuned, because this story is just getting started. Okay, y'all, we've talked about the red flags, we've talked about the isolation, and we've talked about how Janet Jackson was slowly but surely losing herself in this marriage. But what was the one thing that finally made her say, enough is enough? What was the breaking point? The moment where she realized there was no saving this relationship? Well, according to sources, it all came down to one thing: their son. Now, let's take it back. In 2017, when Janet Jackson gave birth to little Eissa Al Mana, it was one of the biggest moments of her life. And let's not forget, this wasn't just any baby for Janet. This was her first and only child, and she had him at 50 years old. That alone made this experience incredibly special for her. She had waited her whole life to become a mother, and when it finally happened, she wanted to give her son the best life possible. But here's the problem. What Janet considered the best life and what Wissam wanted for their son. Two completely different things. Now, this is where things started getting real tense behind the scenes. Janet and Wissam came from two totally different worlds. Janet was raised in the Jackson family, a family that, despite their struggles, was always about music, entertainment, and self-expression. Wissam, on the other hand, came from one of the richest, most powerful families in Qatar, where tradition, privacy, and strict cultural expectations were deeply ingrained in his way of life. And at first, Janet probably thought they could blend their two worlds, raising their son with the best of both. But y'all, that was not how Wissam saw things. Insiders revealed that the moment Eissa was born, Wissam became even more strict, even more controlling, and even more determined to raise their son his way. And when I say his way, I mean Janet was expected to fully embrace his culture and beliefs. No questions asked. Now, Janet has always been open-minded and respectful of different cultures. She had already made huge sacrifices in her own life to accommodate Wissam's way of living. She dressed differently. She changed her performances. She altered lyrics. She gave up a lot of her independence. But when it came to her son, oh no, honey. That was where she drew the line. Sources say that Wissam wanted to raise Eissa under extremely strict guidelines, with a lifestyle that was completely opposite from the one Janet had envisioned. He reportedly expected Eissa to be brought up with deeply conservative values, limiting exposure to Western influences, restricting entertainment, and shielding him from the public eye as much as possible. And for Janet, that was a hard no. Let's not forget, Janet is the entertainment industry. Her entire family is built on music, fame, and the idea that creativity and self-expression are everything. She didn't want to raise her son in an environment where he had to be hidden away or raised under rigid expectations. She wanted Eissa to have freedom, opportunities, and the ability to choose his own path, whether that meant following in her footsteps, exploring different passions, or simply having a normal childhood without constant restrictions. And the worst part? Wissam allegedly didn't just want to control how Eissa was raised, he wanted Janet to have little to no say in it. That's right. According to sources, Wissam expected full control over their son's upbringing, and he didn't believe Janet should have equal influence in making decisions. Now, y'all know Janet wasn't about to let that slide. Janet had already compromised so much, but when it came to her own child, she wasn't willing to just stand back and let someone else dictate his entire future. And once she realized that there was no middle ground, that no matter how much she tried, she and Wissam would never see eye to eye on how to raise their son, that's when she knew this marriage was over. And let's be real, Janet was smart enough to know that the longer she stayed, the harder it would be to have a say in her son's life. If she allowed Wissam to keep pushing her out, she ran the risk of losing the ability to be the mother she wanted to be. And she wasn't going to let that happen. So just months after welcoming baby Eissa into the world, Janet made one of the hardest but most necessary decisions of her life. She left Wissam, filed for divorce, and prepared herself for what was bound to be a legal battle like no other. And y'all, the moment Janet left, that's when things really started to get messy. Because if you think Wissam was just going to let her walk away without a fight, think again. This divorce was about to turn into a major custody battle, a fight over money, and a showdown between two powerful people who both wanted full control over their son's future. So how did Janet manage to escape? What legal battles did she have to fight to protect her son? And what is Eissa's life like today? Let us know in the comments below.